Welcome back to Looks Like Blood on the Balcony. We are in the new year. We've all had a bit of a break for Christmas. I know I took 2 weeks off. I'm sorry. A few people have messaged me saying, when's the next episode? So I apologise to you guys. It's today. But yeah, we've had a couple of weeks off. We've been through Christmas. We've been through New Year. I hope everyone had an amazing time with their families. If you don't celebrate Christmas, it's not your thing. I just hope you enjoyed it ending. Anyway, I hope everyone also enjoyed the Black-Eyed Children and you didn't have any Black-Eyed Children coming to visit you on Christmas Day, because that would have been awful. Anyway, we're circling back round to UFOs today, and a really interesting case that had me a little bit confused. And this one's a little bit different because it's not your typical green or grey alien that you expect in an abduction. Well, can you really say expect in an abduction? Because I don't think anybody really expects to be abducted. But I think if it was different, then I use me on about alien abduction. If I was abducted by an alien, I would expect them to look a certain way. Anyway, I think we will be looking at this one in a little bit of detail. I'm going to probably pronounce it really incorrectly, so if I do, I'm sorry. But this is about beings that had like metal claws rather than little grey aliens. So it's really interesting. Anyway, we'll jump into it together. Thank you all again for joining me on the podcast. We're in week 6, like I say. If you guys have got any ideas of what you want me to touch on for next week, we are back into true crimes next week. We're back into true crime next week. I've had quite a few messages about the Lucy Letby one, which was listened to quite a few times, to be honest, and a few people have messaged me about their views on that, which are really interesting. So I think in next couple of months we'll circle back to Lucy and have a look what's developed on that, because that was a really interesting case that a lot of people have got a lot of opinions on. So I think that's an interesting one to go back to. But yeah, if you've got any true crime that you'd like me to look at, anything sort of recently, I think would be interesting. I don't like ones that not that I don't like them, but years and years ago that have been touched on like hundreds of times. I like recent ones, so I am trying and find more recent events that we can look into, but also the older ones, you can't fault them, can you? So if you've got any ideas of what you'd like me to talk about, Looks Like Blood on the Balcony is the podcast name. Blood on the Balcony is Instagram. I'm also happy for you to message me privately on my personal Instagram. A lot of people have been doing that, so that's also fine. And also the email address is bloodonthebalcony@gmail.com. So email me as well. I check those regularly. I've had a couple of emails come into that inbox. But yeah, keep firing them in and we'll talk about what you want to talk about. This particular case has been emailed to me by one of the listeners, so it's one that's really pricked my ears up. Pricked my ears up? What the hell is that? Pricked my ears up. Oh my god. It's the Pascagoula abduction. Now I know I've pronounced that incorrectly and I will do it again in a minute. But yeah, this is interesting. So let's jump in. But yeah, thanks for coming back. Excited. Let's do it. Let's do it. Okay, so I just wanted to touch on very quickly. So it is the Pascagoula abduction. So my terrible pronunciation, Pascagoula. My terrible, I don't know what I just did. Anyway, the Pascagoula abduction. Pascagoula is a place in America, I believe. Taking a stab in the dark there. But this episode is called Taken from the River. So I just wanted to touch on very quickly before we do jump into this particular episode is the different kinds of aliens and the different beings that have been reported. So when we talk about alien encounters, most of us picture the same thing. So, small grey faces, large black eyes, thin bodies, silent sort of doctor rooms, surgical rooms, you know what I'm trying to envision, filled with bright lights. The so-called greys have become a default image of extraterrestrial in popular culture. So that's, excuse me, That's what you instantly think about when you think about aliens. And also, I don't know about you guys, but E.T. was my favourite film growing up. So I'd love to be abducted by E.T., but it's never going to happen, is it? So, but when you look closely at UFO encounters across history, one thing becomes very, very clear. Not all aliens are described in the same way. So different areas around the world describe very different beings, sometimes so different that it does raise questions far more unsettling than whether aliens exist or not. What if we're dealing with more than one kind of intelligence? So I am a very big believer in, I think if you think that there's nothing else out there, you're very naive, but that's my personal opinion. I think, I was just on a walk yesterday actually with my children, and I said to them, isn't it weird how when you look up, there's just nothing there apart from obviously the universe, but like it's just space. Above us is nothing, and I find that really scary. But yeah, I think there's some. I do believe that there's something out there. Whether or not they'll come to us, I don't know. But I think I read something that a scientist said, and I think they said that if aliens came to Earth, they would be really disappointed at how like far back we are and how like advanced they are compared to us. So they probably wouldn't even be interested in us because it's just like everything that we've got, they've got, but 10 times better kind of thing. Like we're so stuck back in time that they just wouldn't even bother with Earth. They'd just be like, well, that's a bit of shit, and then just go. So I don't know. That's again someone else's opinion, but some reports do describe greys, so small thin beings with the large black eyes, often associated with the medical examination. So are they the ones that come down, grab us, take us back up, and perform all the what are they called? Probing, like Ball the Alien. But no, like the inspect. I can't think what it's called. Examinations on us. Do they come and examine us? The tall humanoids, sometimes called the Nordics, so they are human-looking but unnervingly calm. So if you remember back to when we did the other alien abduction story, he described one of the aliens as quite human-looking. So is that another type of alien that comes to us? And then they've got the insect-like entities, so like the mantis-shaped beings reported in hypnosis sessions, or the robotic or mechanical figures, which are stiff, emotionless, moving as if programmed, so something sent them down and something controlling them. And then they're the ones that just don't fit anywhere. So the being described in tonight's story, the Pascagoula abduction, don't resemble greys at all. They don't resemble humans, and the witnesses struggled to even find the right words for them. So they weren't described as creatures. What they were described as were machines that were alive. So tonight is one of the most credible and disturbing alien abduction cases ever recorded. Not because it's dramatic or sensational, but because the men who experienced it never wanted to talk about it at all, which I find fascinating when people say they don't want to talk about it. It's something that a lot of people, I think it's probably through fear of being ridiculed. Again, I don't think I'd be too keen on saying I was abducted by aliens, but I'd want the world to know. Are you going to get sectioned? There's a lot that there's left with personal preference, I think. So let's jump into it. This is the Pascagoula abduction. So where it started is a quiet night by the river. So it was October the 11th in 1973 in Pascagoula, Mississippi. Nailed it, in America. Two men, Charles Hickson, age 42, and Calvin Parker, just 19 years old, was fishing on the west bank of the Pascagoula River. That wasn't unusual. They're working class men, no interest in fame, no interest in UFOs. They were just doing what they did countless times before. The night was calm, the water was dark and still, and then everything changed. Both men at the same time noticed a blue light glowing through the trees. At first they assumed it was a helicopter, but the sound never came. Instead, the river grew brighter, and then they saw it. There was a craft. It was hovering just above the ground. It was oval-shaped, bright blue, about 8 to 10 feet tall and completely silent. So there was no rotors, no engines, no heat, nothing. They saw this light, they watched the light descend, and then they saw it through the trees, a craft coming towards them, which is, I believe, very similar to other alien abduction stories that I've read. Silence. Now, I would expect something of that size to make a sound. If it was human-made, if it was man-made, I would expect it to make some kind of sound. But they did describe it that the air felt dead, like the sound had been removed from the object so that no one heard what was going on. How true that is, I don't know, but how true the story is, I don't know. Why they would make it up again is, it's crazy, isn't it, really? Because if these are just normal guys that are going out to the river, why would they make up this elaborate story? What was the purpose of it? You know, whether they were just making it up for a laugh, I don't know. But anyway, there was no sound. The doors then opened. It's still hovering just above the ground, which is in popular culture, isn't it? You know, the doors open, the steps come down, and then the aliens appear. Exactly how you would expect, I suppose. But then they said that 3 figures emerged from the craft. So it's a very unique story. The beings weren't small. So you're not talking ET size. You're not talking little tiny aliens running out. You're talking like quite a normal. I don't know what's classed as a normal size. I hate the word normal, but I use it a lot, but I hate it because I don't think anything's normal in the world. And they were human height, so they looked at them, but they weren't human. They immediately thought these guys are not human. Now, I would think, my opinion is all over this, I'm so sorry, but government testing and things like that, I don't know whether that would be involved, but anyway, the witness described the aliens as wrinkled with grey skin, no visible neck, slits where the eyes should be, no mouth and no ears. So they weren't human. They were very weird looking. Oh, can I say that? What if they hear me and then come after me? I always worry about shit like that. Wrinkled grey skin, no visible neck, so weird looking beings. And their arms ended in claw-like appendages, almost like pincers. So if you imagine a lobster, that kind of thing. And they didn't walk, so they didn't use their legs and walk. They floated. This is weird. Charles Hickson said he felt completely paralysed, but he wasn't. He just felt it like he couldn't move. Now, I don't know if you've ever been in a situation where you've been so scared you can't move. I have. I don't know whether you want to know this, but there was a bomb in Manchester, the IRA, back in the 90s. I was there. Terrifying story, terrifying moment. There was a massive loud bang and I just stood. I was so scared. I just stood there. I was with a friend and my mum, and they had gone to the toilet. And I was fine. I was about 11, 12. I was sat outside with another group of people because we were going to see Grease at the theatre. And this big loud bang went off and I just froze and I couldn't move. And I can remember it clear as day. Like I just couldn't move. I was so scared. And then the next thing I remember was just being picked up by a firefighter, and he was just legging it with me over his shoulder. And he was like, "Don't worry, I'll find your mum. And then took me to an ambulance. And then it was terrifying. Not being able to move from fear is terrifying. So I get that. But Calvin Parker actually screamed. He was that scared, he screamed. The beings didn't react. They didn't communicate verbally. They didn't make any sound at all. They simply just took them. So they went over to them, collected them, and took them. Whether or not they were fighting them, I don't know. It doesn't say so far. So when they got inside the craft, the doors closed. They were inside. They don't know whether the craft was moving or not. He said he described floating inside the craft. He wasn't walking or anything like that. He was kind of floating around. He said he was examined by what he believed to be a mechanical eye. The device moved independently and scanned his full body. There was no pain, no communication, no emotion. Calvin Parker later fainted from fear. Within minutes, both men were returned to the riverbank. The craft rose silently into the sky and then disappeared. So they went in, examined, device scanned them with a weird eye, and then they were just left back at the river. Is that an abduction for 2 minutes? I don't know. Depends what your definition of the word abduction is, I suppose. But yeah, they were taken aboard the craft. So they'd been left at the river. And another really interesting thing is they didn't go home. They decided to go straight to the police station, which, again, makes it more believable. They panicked. They were terrified. They'd just been taken aboard this craft, and they went straight to the police station. Officers initially, again, assumed it was a hoax. You know, somebody runs into the police station, completely hysterical, terrified, saying they've been abducted by aliens. Now, I'm not a police officer. I've never been a police officer, so I don't know what they must have. Some kind of protocol for people that are coming in that are hysterical, and are claiming to see unusual things, because I can't imagine it's a very regular occurrence, but I can also imagine that it's not happened. So if I was a police officer, I'm not entirely sure how I would react, but if anyone knows, that would be really interesting to know. If someone comes in and says this, what is the protocol? Officers, again, assumed it was a hoax, so they left the men alone in an interrogation room. They popped them in the interrogation room, and then they secretly started to record them, so they could initially see what their reaction was. They didn't know they were being recorded, so this was all completely natural reaction to what had happened. They didn't capture the like a laughter that you would expect if it was a hoax. So they weren't sitting there taking the piss out of the police or joking about it. They were panicking. They were really, really scared. They were praying. They were crying, and the police said it was genuine fear. They were trying to make sense of what had happened to them. So they were talking to each other, and they were trying to make complete sense of what had happened to them. Their accounts were very similar. They never wavered from what they'd seen. Both of them had seen the exact same thing. Police later admitted they believed that the men were telling the truth. So I think you've got to have a certain degree of reading body language and things like that when you are in the police force. So I think it was a good idea to put them into the secret room and listen to the interrogation room, and see what they'd been saying to each other and how they acted when they first got in there. And putting them in their room also would have made them feel safe instantly, because obviously nothing's going to get them in there unless the aliens come again, I suppose, with their claws. The case was investigated by local police. The US Air Force even got involved, and Project Blue Book. So they didn't completely not believe them. Project Blue Book, let me have a quick look what that is, because I did mean to do this before I started. So that the US Air Force's official declassified program from 1952 to 1969, it investigated unidentified flying objects that determined if they posed a threat to national security or held scientific value. Concluding that none were threats and few remained truly unidentified, it did spark significant public interest and led to historical documentation now, which is available through National Archives. Right, Project Blue Book. Okay, so this has a purpose to study UFOs and to see if they are a threat to the US. It operated for over 10 years, and it was in an Air Force base in Ohio. So over 12,000 reported sightings were most explained, but 701 sightings remained unidentified, with no evidence of extraterrestrial vehicles or national security threats found. So this is what interests me about stuff like this. Like, the government, and they won't admit that something's going on, but they put these things in place. I think there's like a national alien program in America as well. If we got invaded by aliens, would they like this particular team would react? What's it called, Space Force or something like that? I think it's called Space Force, yeah. And I did I'm going completely off here, but I did a quiz as well the other day, and apparently there's one for like when zombies attack as well. So they obviously think that these things could happen, or do they think they need to be prepared just in case these things do happen? I don't know. But the United States Space Force is real. It's an official branch of the US Armed Forces. It was established in December 2019, and it's responsible for securing US interests in space. It operates under the Department of the Air Force, and it's got its own military personnel called Guardians. So are they Guardians of the Galaxy? And they focus on space superiority, global space operations, and in securing secure access to space for the military and civilian needs. So it's to protect the US and allied interests in space, from space and to space, providing critical space-based capabilities. So are these guys fighting aliens? Who knows? I doubt it, but that would be really cool, wouldn't it? If you could get any job in the world, what's your job description? Guardian of the Galaxy. That would be insane. Anyway, I digress. So Project Blue Book also looks into it. Oh, I'm so excited about Space Force. I need to calm down. Anyway, the case was investigated by these people. The men never ever change their story at all. It stayed exactly the same. Both of them always said what happened, and they never, ever, ever changed their story, which is really interesting. Over time, memories do fade. And I think they must have spoken about it so much that they didn't change their story because it stayed fresh in their minds. It would do, wouldn't it, though, if something like that happened? That's staying in your head. Calvin Parker decided to withdraw from public life completely. So he didn't want anything to do with this. He's still very young, 19s and 20s. You're still quite young. You're still quite immature, I think. I think a lot of, I know I did. I made immature decisions at 25, 26 years old. Quite selfish decisions. So I think Calvin Parker probably shown a little bit of, not immaturity, but maybe it's maturity. Maybe it's completely the other way around, staying out of the public eye. I don't know. But Charles Hickson continued to speak, not for the fame, but because he felt like he had no choice. He felt like he needed to talk about it. Then decades later, Parker returned to confirm the story. So he came back out into the public and he confirmed that everything that Charles Hickson was saying, he wasn't mad, this had happened. And he said that he was scared that people would think that he was crazy, which is a completely normal thing to think. I think that would be I would be worried about people thinking if I was crazy or not. So there was no benefit for these men to tell this story. There was no money, no fame, only ridicule. They bought themselves out of this and told them what had happened. So yeah, it's pretty crazy, really, that these. I think it's interesting that the aliens didn't do much more than just examine them with the eye. What information did they get from that? What did they do with the body scans of these people? Maybe it's like what I referred to earlier. Maybe it was like they scanned them and then they're like, what the hell are these guys? You know, they're so like far in the past that we've got no interest with them, so they just kind of dumped them. And maybe that's why you don't hear as many. There's still quite a few alien abduction stories going on at the moment, but maybe you don't see as many. And I think now, I think it's interesting that we've got mobile phones and things like that, but I think any video that comes out in the public now is going to be scrutinised, and I think people are going to say, oh, you've used editing software, you've done this, you've done that, which, you know, it's a lot of people do, which is frustrating for the people that don't, I suppose. But yeah, it's an interesting story. So I've just got a couple of quotes from both of the eyewitnesses. So at the first sighting, I don't know why I'm saying so much, I do apologise. I think it's because I've been out of flow for a couple of weeks. But at the first sighting of light, Charles Hickson said, "It was like nothing I had ever seen before, just a glowing blue light hovering over the river. At first I thought it was a helicopter, but there was no sound, none at all. The air was dead, like someone had sucked all the life out of it." Calvin Parker said, "I saw it and I froze. I tried to speak, but my throat wouldn't work. It was moving, but not like a plane or a helicopter that I'd ever seen. It was floating, and then it opened." On seeing the beings, Hickson said, "They were grey, wrinkled, with no neck, no eyes, no mouth. Their arms ended in pincers. They floated, they didn't walk. I couldn't move, I was paralysed. I just stared at them, terrified." Parker said, "I screamed. I couldn't help it. I wanted to run, but I couldn't move. One of them, it was like it looked at me without even having eyes. I don't even know how to explain it. It was all of awareness, all-knowing, and it terrified me." Inside the craft, Hickson said, "I was inside the ship. I felt this eye, mechanical but alive. It moved over my body, examining me. I felt exposed, like nothing in the world was private anymore. But it didn't hurt. It didn't speak. It just looked or observed." Parker, a bit later on, said, "I fainted. I couldn't take it. The room was dark and metallic, like I was inside a living machine. I remember cold and feeling of pressure, but there was no sound, just them floating." Hickson also said, "It seemed like minutes, but when I came to, I was back by the river. The craft rose silently and disappeared." The men, as I said before, went directly to Jackson's County Sheriff Office. Hickson said, "I didn't want to talk, but I had to tell someone. Something had happened to us and no one was going to believe us. I was shaking. I prayed and prayed they would understand, but I knew no one could." Parker said, "I was scared. I thought they would think I was crazy. I didn't want attention. I just wanted to feel normal again." The police secretly recorded them both. The recordings revealed panic in their voice, trembling and disbelief in Parker's, prayers, whispered pleas for explanation, and total consistency in their story, even under repeated questioning. One of the officers later said, "I have been in the police force for 20 years, and I've never seen anyone so scared and so honest. It wasn't acting." So Hickson did an interview as well, decades later, and he said, "I never wanted fame. I don't want to be known as the guy that got taken, but it happened, and people need to know it's real. It wasn't fun. It was terrifying." And then Parker, he rejoined public disclosure later on, and he said, "I remember the feeling of being lifted off the ground, the creatures just floating, studying us. I know what I saw. I don't have an explanation for it, but I know what happened." Both men never changed their story, despite public ridicule, media attention, and years of doubt. So investigators didn't just interview them, they interviewed neighbours, scanned the riverbanks, and attempted to trace any conventional explanation. None fit. So there was nothing to even begin explaining this. The men had no reason to lie, no fame, no money, no motive. Both were just, I hate the word average and normal are really shit words, but they were just men, hard-working citizens that had no reason to make this story up. Even today, skeptics, why can't I get my words out today? I think I need to warm up a little bit, I'm so sorry. So skeptics believe that the consensus, even today skeptics debate, but the consensus among UFO researchers is that this case remains one of the most credible abduction reports ever recorded. And I think what goes in their favour here is the fact that they went straight to the police station and they had that terrifying video of them and how scared they were. So Calvin Parker avoided publicity, as I said, for decades, but he did eventually speak out, and he said he didn't want anyone to think he was crazy. I just wanted people to know what happened. It really did happen. And the impact of the encounter has stayed with both men. So they've not just had this experience and then that's been the end. They've had nightmares, anxiety in dark or isolated areas, sudden mistrust of the world at night. The case became a touchstone in UFO history, often cited alongside the Betty and Barney Hill abduction, which I'm going to do next week because that's also a really interesting one. The Lonnie Zamora incident and the Allagash abduction. They challenge the assumptions about what aliens look like, how abductions occur, and the psychology of fear and memory. So if aliens do exist, they might not appear as our culture expects. They may not communicate like these aliens didn't, and they may not give answers. I think also what's really interesting is we're aliens to the aliens. Just wanted to get that in there. Love that. Sometimes encounters are more about observation, about leaving a memory, about being watched when no one else is around. Now, I wonder if we ever made it to another planet and we found alien life, would we be doing similar things to what they're doing? This abduction is a reminder that reality, even in a quiet river town, can be stranger than fiction. I also think that it's really interesting how these abductions and these weird stories come up in these really quiet rural towns. They're never in the middle of like London or in the middle of, New York City. I think there's actually one about that, but they don't seem to be very regular in those areas. Now, is that because the aliens prefer to come where it's quiet and find people that are not, where there's not going to be 1,000 people proving that they're there? Is it going to be these quieter towns? I've also seen a theory where they say they go into the quieter towns, they're going to see how few people react to it and how maybe the government react to it before they start invading the big towns. There's also a theory that aliens are already here and they walk among us and we just don't know. Which is also really interesting because there are billions of people in the world, are some of them not humans? Are some of them, faking have they studied us so that they can pretend to be human? Does that make sense? That's a terrifying thought, isn't it? Are they just coming along and appearing to be human when they're not? And, what's their natural form? That's also a theory which is really interesting. I also think I've got this really warped view on science as well, and space and stuff like that, because I always think scientists tell us this stuff. They tell us that the moon is how many thousands of miles away, or the sun is how many thousands of miles away, and we've got this many stars in our galaxy. I have got no way to prove that. I cannot prove that. The only way that I will believe that is if I read it on a piece of paper or if I watch a documentary about it. But my brain is not that way wired up that it could ever prove that these scientists are wrong. I have no proof that these scientists are wrong. Like injections when you have a baby. If I give you this injection for your child, they're not going to get chickenpox or they're not going to get polio or whatever it's called. I've got no way of proving that injection is exactly what that doctor's saying, because one, I can't get hold of that injection without running tests, and two, I'm just believing these people. They are just people. Don't get me wrong, I've had all my children injected, but I do question why I've done that sometimes, because I just believe what these people are saying because they're more, I'm being told that they're cleverer than me, or I'm being told that they've studied things better than me, or they've studied more than me. I'm not saying they are wrong. I'm just saying I don't have the ability, the mental capacity to question them, because my brain is not wired up like that. I have no way of proving what a star is in the sky. I'm never going to go to a star. I'm never going to be able to do that. I just believe what these scientists say. And then, you argue about people with a flat earth theory and all that stuff, which I don't believe, but a lot of people do. And I can see why, because I am told that these things are how it is. I believe it. So I know I'm going off on a tangent, but this is what I'm trying to say. aliens and things, you know, these scientists are saying that thing traveling through space, what was it? I can't remember what it was called. It was a meteor, and it was traveling through space, and it was giving off different weird like thrusters and things like that. And the scientists have just said, oh, it's 1 million years old. Like, how the fuck is that? How do you know that is 1 million years old? Somebody's told somebody who's told somebody else, and they do all these experiments and all these tests, and we just believe it. Or we just take it because scientists say that is the case. That's just my opinion. It's like I say about injections, about doctors, about, you know, I have my flu jab every year, and I go into a room with a complete stranger that injects something into my arm. Okay, I'll take it, because he says that if I get the flu, I might die because I'm asthmatic. So I just take it into my body, because that is what we're told to do. In society, that is what we're told to do. And I think it's mad when you actually sit down and you think about it. It's like, why am I trusting this geezer with this thing in my arm? Like, why am I doing that? So why am I going to trust the government? Oh God, I've gone off one. Anyway, that's enough. Aliens, I believe they exist. I believe that you've got to be completely naive to think that they don't exist. But that, again, my opinion, it was all my opinion. Like, none of this is proven at all. It's all just opinion. So please don't like come at me for my opinions or just views. You know, I will believe science, and I will believe that the flu jab is going to stop me getting the flu, because that's what I've been told to do, which is insane, really. But yeah, sometimes we encounter things that we don't understand, and sometimes they are just about observation. So, you know, these aliens have come down, they've abducted these 2 guys, and they've just wanted to have a look what they're all about. So yeah, just be reminded that this abduction it can happen to anyone at any time. And just have your wits about you. I think the right thing to do is to tell people, but I do get that there's going to be a stigma that you're crazy. Let me know what you think. Let me know your views on anything that I've talked about, really, even me going off on my tangent about the government and stuff. Let me know if you think aliens exist. Let me know if you think that UFOs exist. Let me just talk to me, reach out to me. bloodonthebalcony@gmail.com. Instagram looks like Blood on the Balcony. I'd love to hear your stories. I'd love to hear your views as well. I really do encourage I do encourage to speak to people. If you'd like to come on the podcast, that would be amazing. I'd like to have some other people come and chat to me about stuff. That would also be amazing. I have got someone coming in a few weeks, which will be great. But yeah, so just remember, if you see an inexplainable light in the sky, try get a picture. If you see it, you see it. Like, believe it. If you see a light in the dark, remember, some stories don't need to be understood. You don't need to understand what you're seeing. Just remember them. You know, share them, let people know what the hell you've been seeing. So yeah, this has been Looks Like Blood on the Balcony. Next week is True Crime Week. I'm going to have a look at what we can look into next week. I really enjoy doing the deep dives into people's true crime, and I love it. I love watching the documentaries. If anyone's got any documentaries about true crime that they think is particularly interesting, let me know. But yeah, we'll go back to that next week. Thank you so much for listening. Opinions, views, debates, all welcome. Love it all. Yeah, drop me a message, and I hope you guys have a lovely evening. Thank you again for listening. And we will go on to episode 7 next week. Bye.